Welcome. My name is Daniela Scruggs. I work at Highest Pennsylvania, and I want to thank you all for joining us to advocate today. I hope that whatever you learned today, you also tell your friends and networks about. The asylum rule that we're commenting on we have until Wednesday to make comments. So please share this with your friends and family, what you've learned, and ask them to do this too. So just to go over what we're gonna do, I'm gonna just first explain exactly what a public comment is and why we're bothering to do that today. Then I'm gonna go over what these new asylum rules are. I'm gonna give a basic overview. You will be, I'm sure, I know there are a couple of lawyers on the call. If you want to read them yourselves, Becca will be putting the rules in the chat. I am doing high level, so I won't be able to answer really like in-depth legal questions. But I want you, while I am explaining it, pick the one part that you really want to comment on. So a lot of organizations like Highest National are going to have like a basic, this is all the things wrong with the rule, which is a great way to do it if you don't have time. They have kind of a form letter that you can use. But I really suggest picking one part that you want to speak and make an argument about. So Sheila, you raised your hand. I'm gonna unmute you. Do you have a question? Just a second. I can't unmute you. Wait a moment.
No, it's okay. I actually raised, I did that before when you said clap or raise your hand.
Clap. Sorry. Okay, so that's another way. If you want me to ask me a question, you can raise your hand and I will see that. So after I go over the rules, it will be time for questions. And then if you want to, you can stay with us online as you'll see me writing my comment. I think it's really nice to be around other people while you write comments, but if you have dinner waiting or need to do your comments later, you can also leave after the question and answer period. So let's talk for a second about why write public comments. So the Administrative Procedure Act was passed in 1946, and it says that when a federal agency plans a new rule, it has to open it up to public comment. And it has to respond to each unique comment before putting the rules into effect. This leads to two ways that writing a public comment is helpful. So the first way is that it can make the agency reconsider some of its rules, especially if you're making a good argument. We can see that this happening with the public charge rule. Now, the current public charge rule is not good. It prevents people who are immigrants from accessing public benefits, but it had in its original form gone even farther and prevented people from being able to get green cards, even if their US citizenship child was using public benefits. So it used to count children as part of it, and the newer version of the public charge rule does not include that rule. So part of writing public comments is to really make the agency rethink, why do this rule in the first place? The second reason that we write public comments is that it slows down the process. Like I said, every new rule has to respond to each unique comment, and that takes time. And if they don't do what they're supposed to do, you can have a lawsuit. And that lawsuit has, in the last 3 years, we've had a couple of agency rules not go into effect precisely because they didn't follow the Procedure Act. And we have some where they did, and they still haven't gotten to the time when they publish the rules. For example, USCIS published fees for public comments back in November, and they still haven't put the new fees into effect. So public comments are different than writing your legislature, but when it comes to executive action, when it's a federal agency, it can actually be a pretty powerful tool to speak up. And I think that this is something I was saying at the beginning, I've learned during this time, is how public comments are another way to participate in democracy. So in specific today, we are writing public comments on the new rules on asylum procedure. And Becca is going to put the specific rules in that link in the chat if you want to read it yourself. But overall, the new rules attack the asylum process in 3 major big picture ways. And I'm going to go over all of these 3. The first is that it's making the asylum process harder. So there are more ways just in the procedure that you can be turned away or mess up. The second is they redefine the grounds for asylum and redefine what persecution even means. They are very much narrowing what are the grounds for asylum and making a lot of things that you or I would consider persecution, not persecution anymore. And the third is creating more ways that people can be mandatory denial from getting asylum. That's saying that even if people are definitely should be able to get asylum, if they messed up, if they didn't pay taxes when they were supposed to, they can then get denied, automatically denied asylum with no discretion from the judges. So let's go through those 3 things. The first part is making the process harder. So first, they made it less likely to get through the first credible fear interview. So if you come over the border or arrive at the airport and say, hey, hi, I need asylum, that person is then interviewed by an asylum officer who has to assess whether or not there's any chance that this person actually has a reason for asylum. And I won't get into the legalese, but pretty much now the asylum officer says, oh, this person will most likely get asylum, instead of, oh, this person might get asylum. I'm not using the legalese, but it's changing to that. So maybe you're crossing the border. A lot of people, they don't speak English. They don't know what our asylum process is, and they're supposed to be able to give a really good reason why they get asylum in that interview, or they're turned away and have to get back on that plane or cross the border. The second is that it lets judge throw out cases without letting the applicant take the stand and tell their story. The only way to claim, it could be that a judge just decides someone's asylum claim by what is written down in a docket. And the third is that individuals can't apply for multiple forms of relief. That means if they've both been escaping for asylum and they've been trafficked in the United States, they actually have 2 different ways they can claim status here in the US. And some take longer, some there's a little bit of chance. So many people do apply for different forms that they are eligible for, and they are no longer going to allow that. So that's all of the process issues. I think the even bigger issues are who is allowed to get asylum and what is persecution. So you can no longer get asylum as if your persecution is gender-based. So we have one of the cases that has come up is there was a woman who was being beat up, almost lost her life in a domestic violence situation. She then went to the cops to try to get help for that domestic violence situation, and the cops took the abuser's side. That person then crossed the border and came to the US asking for asylum. It used to be, according to many people who have interpreted asylum law, that counts as something you can claim asylum for. And they are going, that is now explicitly, in no case can you get asylum based on gender-based violence. There's also anything that's considered a private criminal act, you cannot get asylum for. They are pretty much trying to redefine persecution as something only the state can do. So even if you're attacked by a terrorist group, attacked by a very organized gang that kind of has power in your area, you can't get asylum. And the third is being based as part of a group that's not clearly defined. And many people say that a lot of LGBT individuals are going to have a hard time claiming asylum because of this part of the rule. Again, this is not the entirety of the rule, but these are a couple of ways they're redefining asylum. The other part of how they're redefining asylum is redefining what does it mean to be persecuted. And I just picked out a couple of the reasons that they say, things that they say are no longer persecution. For example, a law that isn't usually enforced and has yet to be enforced on the applicant doesn't count as a ground for asylum. So if you're LGBT and there's a law in the books that say that you can be killed for being gay in your country and it hasn't been enforced on you yet, that doesn't mean you can get asylum. Maybe, so the possibility is not enough. This again can, in the next rule, a repeated threat that has never been acted upon. So if someone said, I'm gonna kill you multiple times, that's not persecution until it's been acted upon. I think that this is the craziest rule to me, because if someone's threatening you and they're threatening you with your life or threatening with you to be maimed or something, you're supposed to wait until they've actually acted in order to get asylum. Just seems crazy, but that is how the rules are written. And then also non-severe economic harm or property damage isn't grounds for asylum. So even if they repeatedly, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example. I was thinking about if they burn a cross in front of your house, there's no property damage there, it's just a threat. That may no longer be considered persecution. So it's become much, much, much harder to say that whatever someone is doing to you that is making you fear for your life is persecution. And then the last way, and I mean, they're really going three-pronged how to destroy the asylum process, is that they added a large number of reasons why you would be mandatory denied for asylum. So that would be if you fail to pay taxes, even if you didn't know you were supposed to, if you missed an asylum interview, if you traveled through a second country, if there was any chance they could, that they could have resettled somewhere else, and the applicant has to actively prove that they couldn't resettle somewhere else. And if they don't apply for asylum within a year, and most any criminal conviction, even if it was expunged. So pretty much if you, for example, might be a immigrant from Africa who's claiming asylum, who is in a community that's over-policed and gets in trouble for, say, smoking marijuana, that case of smoking marijuana could lead to your asylum case being denied and being sent back to a country where the government is actively imprisoning you. So overall, now in order to get asylum in this in the United States, you have to got to the United States directly. So you're either Canadian, Mexican, or somehow got a flight directly here. You have to been actively persecuted by a state actor. So it has to be like a country person. And you have to have not messed up any of the rules in order to get asylum. So many people have said it pretty much means it's almost impossible to get asylum. On this page, I did some quotes that I just thought were especially awful. So one of the things that they say is that a public official not acting under the color of the law does not constitute consent of a public official. So if someone is going rogue and is a police officer or is a military officer, it no longer counts as state persecution. Or I like that even if you're intermittently harassed, including brief detentions. So even if you are put into jail multiple times, that does no longer is considered as persecution. I encourage you, if you want to get angry, to read it in full. It is quite frustrating reading the rules. But overall, I would recommend picking one or more of what I went over. Again, the link to this presentation is in the chat to write your public comment about. So now that I've explained to you what public comments are and what the rules are, let's talk about actually writing them. So Becca, if you could put into the chat the link, the regulations.gov website. This gets you directly to the page where you can submit your comments. I would recommend writing your comments in a word processor just so you don't lose it. But once you go to that website, there's going to be a blue button that says comment now. So this is how the website looks. Up in this right-hand corner over here, you'll see there's the comment now button. You would click on that button and it will bring you to this page that it's actually surprisingly easy to use. You can either upload a PDF or copy and paste your comments into this box here. You can put your name or not put your name. You are not required to put your name. Then you would press continue, which is down at the bottom right here. And then you'll get a preview page where it will have your comments. It will have your name, and you have to click that part that says, I read and understand the statements above, and submit the comments.